presentation is the PESTEL analysis of Canadian Tire with its human rights violation, presented by Chiamaka, Jovelyn, Abigail, and Garange. Here's Jovelyn for the introduction.
So to start with, I would like to give an introduction to the PESTEL analysis and Canadian Tire human rights violation. So the Canadian Tire and its issue regarding a filed complaint of Don and Richard Wilson, who experienced a systemic racism of security staff and discrimination. So this PESTEL analysis helped us to understand how the external factors impact the ethical problem of human rights against Canadian Tire in order to restore their public trust in the company and take their responsibility. It also helped us in our understanding of ways in which external elements influence the moral dilemma raised by the company human rights claim. So, in this analysis, it demonstrates how closely the factors are to this human rights concern. To build its reputation and show its dedication to fairness, Canadian Tire will need to resolve the issue in a transparent manner while improving its guidelines and processes regarding equity and inclusivity. So it is also included how stakeholders make a significant impact to the problem to have a better solution. So now we will tackle the PESTEL analysis, which are the political, economical, social, technological, legal, and environmental. So Zubi will discuss the political factor.
The political factor. The government at the federal level might be pressured to take a stand and react to the problems regarding discrimination and racism, especially in the corporate environment. The government's relationship with the indigenous group, particularly regarding land and resources rights, could influence responses to this incident. The stakeholders involved in the political factor are the Government of Canada, the indigenous group, particularly the Heiltsuk Nation, these political activists and advocacy groups. I'll give my partner Garan to talk about the economic factor.
So, in the economic factor, Canadian Tire may face economic repercussions if public backlash results in decreased sales, especially within indigenous communities and other groups concerned about corporate responsibility. The company might need to invest in diversity and inclusion programs, anti racism training, and corporate social responsibility efforts to restore its reputation and mitigate financial losses. In the stakeholders, the first is Canadian Tire, which is directly impacted by the economic fallout of the allegations, and second is consumers, which are particular those from the Hilsuk nations, and the third one is shareholders and investors, which are concerned about the financial health of Canadian Tire, particularly the long-term effects of reputational damage. Now, Abigail will discuss about the social factor.
So for the social factor, the accusation of racism and human rights violations touches on broader societal issues of racial discrimination, the indigenous rights, and the need for betterment of the marginalized groups in Canada. Public awareness and social media discussions can amplify the issue, possibly affecting the company's brand image and customer loyalty, particularly consumers who advocate social justice. So under the Social Nation, which is the indigenous group that has accused a Canadian Tire of racism. And then second is the general public and consumers, who are the people who may form opinions based on media coverage. The third one is the human rights organizations, which are groups advocating for better treatment of indigenous peoples. And the fourth one are the employees of Canadian Tire, especially those within affected regions. So for the technological factors, Javelin will be the one to discuss.
So for technological factors, it is more about the social media platforms in online news outlets have given individuals and organizations the ability to share their experience widely, influencing public opinion and corporate behavior. So Canadian Tire may need to use these technological solutions such as public statements and social media platforms to address those issues. So the stakeholders under these factors are social media users who might share or amplify the story. Second is public relations and communications teams, who are the team who will need to address the issue through technological means. And the third one is the media and journalists, who are responsible for reporting and analyzing the issue. And the next factor would be environmental factor to be discussed by Zubi.
Okay, the environmental factor. The Canadian border environmental practices could be a part of the the overall reputation of Canadian Tire. If the company is perceived as neglecting social responsibility, they may be questioned by their stakeholders. Some of their stakeholders are the environmental advocacy group, though they are not really related to this specific incident. It may come off the incident may come off as a bad look to Canadian Tire, and they may not want to work with them anymore. And the consumer concerned with corporate responsibility. Many customers now consider a company social and environmental record when trying to purchase things from them, and this may affect the company. Next is the legal factor, and Garand will take that.
In the legal factor, the company could face legal challenges regarding human rights violations, particularly if investigations or lawsuits find evidence of systemic racism or discriminatory practices in its operations. Canadian Tire might also face pressure from human rights organizations, indigenous groups, and the legal community to take concrete steps to address the issue, which may involve policy changes, compensatory actions, or public apologies. In the stakeholders, the first is legal authorities, which could investigate Canadian Tire if the accusations lead to a legal case regarding human rights violations. The second is indigenous groups, which may pursue legal actions or negotiations to ensure that Canadian Tire compensates for any wrongdoing and ensures future protection of indigenous rights. Third is human rights and civil rights organizations, in which groups that might advocate for legal action, ensuring accountability for the alleged human rights violations. And the fourth is Canadian Tire's legal team, which will play a crucial role in navigating any potential lawsuits, defending the company, and advising on steps to resolve the issue. Now, Abigail will discuss the conclusion on the pestle analysis.
So for the conclusion on the PESTEL analysis, this PESTEL analysis addresses the concerns raised by the Hilltop Nation will require the company to navigate these factors carefully to mitigate damage to its reputation and maintain compliance with legal and social expectations. It also includes all relevant stakeholders who could be directly or indirectly impacted by the incident involving the company and the Hilltop Nation. These stakeholders really play a pivotal role in shaping the outcome and ensuring that the issue is addressed properly. So, here are some recommendations to the Canadian Tire Company. Jovelyn,
Jubilee,
you're muted,
you're
Jovelin, you
sorry.
are muted.
I'm sorry. So here are the recommendations for that the team came up to address effectively the allegations of racism and human rights violations. So first is the immediate public apology and acknowledgement, which the Canadian Tire should issue a formal, sincere apology and acknowledging the issue to express their regrets. And second, engage in dialogue with the Hilsuk Nation to open a respectful dialogue with the Hillsop Nation and other indigenous groups. And third, to conduct an internal investigation, which should launch an independent investigation into the allegations of racism by its security personnel. And fourth, implement anti-racism and diversity training, which to develop and roll out comprehensive anti-racism and diversity training for all staff to address unconscious bias and improve cultural sensitivity. And fifth, it's the review and strengthen company policies to strengthen the corporate policies on discrimination, human rights, and customer relations to understand the importance of respecting diversity. 6, establish a transparent reporting and accountability mechanism for easy access and transparent mechanism to all employees and customers to report discrimination and other racism concern. And 7 is the corporate social responsibility commitments in indigenous communities to and supporting indigenous communities to including partnerships, funding programs, and promoting indigenous businesses. And lastly is to monitor and publicize progress uh, to these initiatives, including the outcomes of the investigation, success of training programs, and changes in policy. Publish updates for stakeholders to review. And sorry, there is still the collaborate with human rights organization who are specialized human rights and racial justice, such as the Canadian Human Rights Commission and Indigenous advocacy groups. The 10th one is the legal compliance and compensation. So these are the findings who support the allegations of human rights violation. 11th is the rebuild reputation through a focused marketing campaign. These are the internal actions are underway. So Canadian Tire should focus on rebuilding its reputation through a marketing campaign that highlights its commitment to diversity, inclusion, and respect for Indigenous rights.
Okay, so for the conclusion on the recommendations and implementation, by taking these actions explained by Jovelyn, Canadian Tire can not only address the immediate issue of racism and human rights violations, but also set a strong foundation for positive long term change, demonstrating accountability, transparency, and a genuine commitment to inclusivity will help restore trust among its customers, employees, and communities while also preventing future issues.
Thank you
Thank you
Thank
so
very
you.
much.
much.
Thank you.
So how many minutes? How